Okay, how's everyone doing in our online world? We are going to start again. I'm going to hold questions for a little bit because I want to start this next section of how does karma ripen and look at that a little bit. Somebody put this here for me.
It's your mind.
It's my mind. This is clearly coming from my mind. There's no question. And it's a nice karmic arousal because I'm having pleasure when I look at this. And then I'll see it's so cute in the States. In the United States, we have a holiday at the end of October called Halloween. Some people are aware of. And I live between 9 children on my side of the street. I've watched these kids grow up since they were born, most of them. And now the oldest is well, there's one that's a bit older, so she must be 15 now, but they're basically between 6 and 13. And it happens very quickly, right? You raise kids and like all of a sudden there's like their children, and then especially with the girls, the bodies start changing and suddenly they are in a different realm. Like the childhood is gone. And I'm watching that with some of them. But then Halloween comes and they all dress up. And there's been pictures of all of them on our, front of our house, and and so it evolved over the years of Halloween. When I was a kid, is you got big candy bars. You go house to house. And the thing was, people would give you a candy bar. And then you'd come home at night and we'd empty them, in our living room with my parents and my brother, sister, and I, and there'd be a competition. My sister always got the most. She was the oldest. So she had the best way to get around the neighborhood quickly. The houses are one after another, So, yeah, just amazing, and then I was the youngest, so I would have the least, and I'd be arguing about my candy bar. It's a total grasping. This is what we're raised with. How come she got that candy bar? And then, I wanted this one, and there's no dharma. So you're just grasping, and the eye, and, you just see, it's just so reinforced if we're not raised in a dharma family, which is most of us, it's just how it is. But at least we got a good situation. We have a wonderful center here. So suddenly you make contact and then we can start doing our work like that. So what happens is it evolved over the years. Candy bars are expensive in the States now. So they somehow give you a packet, you buy smaller bars, little. And my brother and I look at it and we go, that's not Halloween. Like you can't. But this is what you give to the kids, and it's expensive. And, and a lot of people come to your door. So come to the door. And so I make sure those 9 kids get a big candy bar from me. Like I still go back to them and they always go, oh, come on, Amy's, we're going to get the, and I'm always like, and I ask them, what's their favorite bar? And I try to have you have to have a big bar. So I can't give that out to everybody, but I make sure those 9 kids get their bigger bar.
You want more big, right?
Much bigger than that. Oh no, I'm talking about like a sizable chunk of, and then my mother we would put it in these cabinets, and then my mother would, when we were at school, she would help herself to some of our bars that she liked her favorite. We would keep the favorites for her. But on a totally different note about this, sorry for this tangent, is my dad was an engineer, and he years and years ago, I must have been 6 years old, he decided from a scientific magazine, he made what was called a talking pumpkin for Halloween for the kids. And he built this pumpkin and had an intercom in its head. It was a plastic head, that was covered up. The intercom was covered up. And then the line, in the old days, there was no wireless. He ran a wire to the front bedroom of the house so he could look out, and he put the pumpkin on the front lawn and could see the kids come by, so he could talk to the kids through this intercom. And it got written up in the newspaper. It was this huge thing, Mr. Pumpkin, they called it. So it was a huge thing for years, and it was a big highlight, and people would come from other neighborhoods to see Mr. Pumpkin and talk to Mr. Pumpkin. It was the sweetest thing. He had people playing guitars by Mr. Pumpkin. He'd have kids come up and say, Mr. Pumpkin, these little kids, have you seen my brother? I lost my brother on the street, and there's so many kids. And then he'd say, well, who's he dressed up like? And he'd say, he's a goblin. He's dressed up like a goblin. And my father would remember some goblin that went off down the street. Like, I think he went down, and then she'd come back later. I found my brother. Thank you. Like just all kinds of very cute little things. And so that went on for years. And I think there's a photo of me in the paper with my best friend. We were like 6 and 7 with Mr. Pumpkin in the Philadelphia paper. They put it. So anyway, Mr. Pumpkin moved to the next town to my brother's house when my father finished doing it. And my brother puts him up on the lawn, and he's got like an old jacket of mine from when I was a kid and jeans. You know, it's a structure that, and we dressed him up. And then he had this plastic pumpkin head with a straw hat. It's so fun. I'll have to find you a photo of Mr. Pumpkin.
Yeah.
So anyway,
So you
that
know,
reminds-
in Netherlands, we do it on November 11.
yes, because other
Same,
countries have
same.
adopted, yeah, a bit, or they have a different holiday. And you do it on November 11th.
Saint Martin.
St. Martin, I've heard of that. Yeah, that people, I think I was here once for it, that the kids go around to,
They have to sing.
with the lanterns. Oh, very nice. And they sing some, because I know in urban areas in the States, for instance, my sister raised her kids in Brooklyn, New York. So you could go house to house, but you'd have to go with the parents because it's a little bit more dangerous. But then they go down the streets where the shops were. And the shops would, you know, had candy they give to the kids. It's also very sweet. And a lot of places do that where you go to the shops and they would give the kids some. And one year I just remember my nephew was 4 maybe, and Bill Clinton was running for president. So Halloween's right around Election Day. It was like right before Election Day. And he somehow went into the store in a black turtleneck, was dressed up as a saxophone player. He had a saxophone. This is my nephew. First he wanted to be a saxophone player. And Bill Clinton played the saxophone, apparently. It was one of our past presidents in the States. So, but somehow he came out of the store. They had put a button on him in the store of like, and he came out of the store, and my sister, and he was 4 years old, and she saw him in the store because the kids like to go in alone. But he was talking and talking. She sees through the window. He's just, and the ladies are around like laughing, and he comes out of the store, and she goes, what were you talking about in there with the, you know, he was a real talker in those days. He's now in his 30s, right? But he's a real talker. And he came out and he said to her, they're going to vote for me. Like, it was just, so he turned into Bill Clinton in the store, came out as like, I remember she told me they're going to vote for me. Anyway, Halloween. So, okay, I want to go through how does karma ripen? You know, we're talking about, we make these imprints in our mind. Let's look at a few things. Appearances that come from our karma. Appearances that come from our karma. Let's explain a little bit about this. I'm just right now going to look at killing karma, harming others. The first Buddhist precept, it's the first thing that really helps you follow a Buddhist path, is we have to refrain from harming or killing. It's number 1. So if I give refuge to people and give them the lay precepts, they have to take that one. It's absolutely one, or there's no point in doing it. So you have some other ones. When you're taking lay precepts, then you refrain from killing, you refrain from stealing, you refrain from lying, you refrain from sexual misconduct and intoxicants. So some teachers, rarely do they make you take all 5. But for me, you absolutely have to take the killing one. So we have something called, number 1, how does it ripen? The fully ripened result. Fully ripened result. One result could be rebirth in a lower realm. Okay, so if I'm harming others, if I'm killing others, you know, and killing insects as well, and this is very hard for us to understand.
Yeah.
That karma, again, because one of the characteristics of karma is it increases. It increases. So if I kill the insect now, I don't have any regret about doing that at all. I don't apply any type of purification practice. That karma can grow. And that's why we like to do Vajrasattva at the end of every day, just in case I stepped on something accidentally. It does change it if I stepped on it and killed it accidentally versus I intended to kill that insect with great glee, intending to do it again. Very different outcome based on your motivation. Okay, but one of the fully ripened results can be rebirth in a lower realm, especially with killing, often rebirth in a hell realm. Okay. You can also experience this in a human realm and have some really negative circumstances come up. We're going to talk about that. You have another way it ripens called an environmental result. Environmental result. Result of killing, for instance, is food, things that could bring you health, cause sickness. So food poisoning, like that. You get in a case of diabetes, be careful. Many foods that contain sugar, okay, can cause you to develop an illness like diabetes, like that, adult onset, things like that. So medicines that normally would help you as a result of your kind of possessed or environmental result of killing is a medicine doesn't help me. They're ineffective, like that. Or it can make me really ill. I can have a side effect that causes worse, that harms my life. And this is produced by the karma, the negative karma of killing, like that. You can have digestive problems, right? You eat food you can't digest, things like that. We also have something called a result similar to the cause. Okay, and there's two ways this ripens. A result similar to the cause as an experience, and a result similar to the cause as an action. Okay, the experience one, result similar to the cause as an experience, as a result of killing or harming others, okay? Others try to harm me. You know, I live in a war-torn country where my life is in danger all the time. There's a lot of poisonous insects and mosquitoes that can kill me, that can bite me, causing me to die. There's people, dangerous people around me, trying to harm me, shoot me, stab me, things like that. You know, I live in a very fearful, unsafe environment as a result, as an experience similar to the cause of killing, like that. And then results similar to the cause as an action is I'm programmed in my mind due to those imprints of killing in my consciousness to want to kill again, to not see a problem with killing, you know, wanting to kill a lot of insects, deciding to exterminate my house because it's full of insects. So we're going to call the exterminator. And I have no real regard for that. It doesn't bother me in the least. Always. And you can see this with young kids. And this is kind of for me when I really got into Buddhism, started looking at karma, because karma is very hard to prove because it doesn't ripen immediately like that. But I watched at that time, my niece and nephews, there's 4 of them, were young kids. And they came from the same parents. So there's 2 boys that came from one set of parents, and there's a boy and a girl that came from another set of parents. Very similar circumstances. And these 4 kids are so different, unbelievable. So the 2 boys from one set of parents are 1.5 years apart. So quite close in age. They're in their 30s now. They look similar, like that. And their personalities couldn't be more different, night and day, like that. There's a few things that are similar to their parents, traits they have. And there's a lot of things that are completely different from both parents. And your boys? Very, very different, and different from you and Rick.
One looks more like me, the other one looks more like me.
But their minds, characters,
It's a mixture.
it's a mix, yeah. So often there's some mix, but some traits, where does it come from? So I started watching them and thinking, and I was new to Buddhism, so I was really like, wow. And then one of my nephews, of the older one, he's 3 years older than his sister, same parents. As a kid, very, very easy to like kill ants and, oh, look at them, let's kill them. You see kids like that. They're just, you know, and then the sister, when she came out, and then 3 years later, she was always like, no, 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 don't kill it. Let it, look, the ant's walking to its home. But where does it come from? Yeah. The parents were a mix. Like one of them was very happy to kill insects really quickly, like that. The other one would kind of let it play out. And, you know, so you look at that and then you start seeing they have their own, something they're coming in with a mind, all its own. So my 2 nephews, 1.5 years apart, very young age. I mentioned this before. One of them at the age of 1, living in an apartment in New York, And one time we were, where did he go? Which room? We couldn't find him. You know, it wasn't that the apartment was that big, or we couldn't find him. No, he's by the bookshelf. Couldn't read at age 1. In the bookshelf with pulled some of the books down, has a big book on his lap. And he is just was totally enamored with books from a very young age. So he's a very big reader now. Always was interested in books, always reading. His older brother, no interest in books. You know, he was interested in the truck, and he was interested as soon as they got him a little plastic play keyboard, he was into the computer. That's what he totally tech savvy, very smart like that. And the other one, not at all. You know, so again, there's a mind in there operating with all those karmic imprints, all those karmic seeds. So think about if you're living in a situation where you feel fearful a lot, living in a very unsafe place, all these other things. Sometimes you take medicines that don't help you, don't have any power, suffer from food poisoning. Look at those kind of things. Maybe you need to get clear on what you're harming, what you've harmed in the past, and do purification practices that will take care of that and clear that up. Okay, let's look at stealing. Appearances that come from stealing. Again, general antidote that comes is taking rebirth in the lower realm as a result of stealing. Fully ripened result, rebirth in a lower realm. Okay. Okay. And then a possessed or environmental result you could have. Okay. You live in a place devoid of water, devoid of any fresh water to drink, not much rain, heavy drought in your area. Okay, if the water comes down, it dries up immediately, you know, or it could be the adverse. There's too much water, destroys crops as a result. So it destroys the food source as well, destroys houses, things like that. And there are people, it's interesting, people, for instance, in the United States, also in Asia, like if you take rebirth in a country like Bangladesh, a lot of it is underwater generally. You know, taking rebirth in a part of the States called New Orleans in Louisiana in the South. A lot of New Orleans is below sea level, you know, so, and it's right on the Gulf of Mexico. So the storms are coming in, washing. We had a terrible Hurricane Katrina some years ago. 1,000 people died. So again, environmental result of stealing. So you're going to have your property, everything washed away as a result, like that. Another result of stealing could be you always have to share your belongings. You have no control over them. You have no ownership of any of your belongings, anything like that. You often lose things. This can be an environmental thing. And you know people that this often happens to, and that's a result of stealing from other people, from this, and also the intention to steal. Okay. Then you have a couple of things result similar to the cause as an experience, and you have the result similar to the cause as an action. Result similar to the cause as an experience with stealing. Any ideas? As an experience.
People steal from you.
People steal from you. People take stuff away from you. Exactly. You live in a barren landscape where food doesn't grow. People have the power to confiscate your belongings like that. Robbed from, and you have this intention in your mind, comes from your own mind. Again, comes from your mind. Result similar to the cause of an action is what? As an action with stealing. You want to steal again. It's in your mind. I want to steal again. You see no problem with stealing. You have a habit of taking what isn't offered or borrowing without asking. Okay. And it arises again and again. So that's in your mind. Okay. And so some of you may have noticed at a young age tendencies to perform the 10 non-virtues. When I mention the 10 non-virtues, let's review those again. 3 of them relate to your body, which we refrain from. Number 1, killing or harming. Number 2, stealing. Number 3, sexual misconduct. There's 4 related that we do with our speech. Number 1, lying. Number 2, divisive speech, number 3, harsh speech, number 4, gossip or idle chatter. 3 we do with our mind. Number 1, covetousness. That always gets people, it always trips people up. Having a greedy attitude, we refrain from that, or covetousness. Number 2, harmful intent or malice. We refrain from that. Having negative thoughts about people over and over. And 3 is holding wrong views. We refrain from that. So once again, when I mentioned those 10 non-virtues, 1 or 2 are going to jump up for you. Did you notice as a young child, can you go back in your mind to see them operating as a young child? Do you have any examples in your mind, in your life? Everybody gets, some people are shaking their heads. So the thing is, where does it come from? Where do you think this comes from?
Sabrina wants to say something.
Yes, Sabrina?
Yes, I usually think about me and my sister because she was really calm all the time. She's really patient, and I wasn't. I used to get angry when my father was shouting or saying things. You cannot do this. I used to get very angry, and I used to think, how dare does he talk to me that way? And I was really strong, and I wouldn't do anything that he was saying to me. I would do the opposite.
So can you see as a young child, where does that come from, do you think?
Oh,
Because your mother was different, right?
yeah. I think that it makes sense for me that it comes from my previous life.
Previous life.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. When I studied, I think, yes, it doesn't, anything else doesn't make sense because we were born in the same family. We were told the same thing, but she was very quiet.
Yep.
She kept saying to me, Sabrina, don't do that. Otherwise, it's worse. But for me,
so you could see how, so other people as well, can you see that maybe it came in from another life? Possible? Now, not everybody here believes in reincarnation, possibly, okay? But again, then you have to ask yourself, where does that imprint, that experience come from? Where do you think it's coming from? If you're noticing a sibling doesn't have that trait at all, doesn't have that trait at all. Do your parents have that trait? Did you notice repeated thinking in your mind as a young person? Now, some people, their memories start later, but just notice when you can remember as far back as you can remember in this life, where does it come from? You really have to ask yourself, because that's where your suffering comes from, those previous moments in your consciousness. So if you're feeling it's got to come starting in this life, check that. Check that, because other people in your family have a different trait. So could there be previous moments in your consciousness that could indicate a previous cause in your mind stream, in your mind, that eventually goes back into another life where there's other habits of that in your mind? Other habits of that. Oh, sorry, there's chats here. Let's see. So spousal abuse. Vivian, you mentioned about what?
This is from long before.
Yeah, about what in particular? This was an hour ago.
This was when you
That was a comment by one of the participants about being attacked with a knife.
Yes.
And I just wanted to point out, if this is a repeated action, it could point to spousal abuse, and in which case, yes, the realizing about the karma and being calm, but if it's a repeated thing, then it's better to get themselves to a safe place.
Absolutely.
That was back.
Absolutely. Yeah, so
when
she
we
was
were
referring
discussing
to your,
yeah.
and if there is anyone, when you have that situation domestically in your own home, or someone in your family or in your life repeatedly, I would echo that you have to take charge to get yourself to a safe place and get help for that. It's very, very difficult when they're living in your home. And as we know, during COVID, it was a nightmare for people, being quarantined with their abuser. no place to go like that. So definitely. So certainly we can recognize it's coming from my mind and it's coming from past imprints of negativity in my mind of harming others, but it doesn't mean you just sit. So any of these things, you don't just sit there with and go, well, it's my mind, it's my karma. Okay. You sometimes have to take action of, can I do something about this to make sure you are safe? So I'm not saying that you just ignore it and go, well, it's my mind and my karma. And oh, and if they do stab me, then it's good purification. No, please, not like that at all. That's not what I'm saying. It's just that if those circumstances happen, is there another way for me to view it in a more positive framework? But absolutely get help. Oh, and then Mike mentioned, yeah. So we talked about that. Okay, so here we go. Is it nature versus nurture if you're a Buddhist practitioner? Debbie, can you elaborate on that, what you mean by that?
Yeah, it's an interesting concept because I believe in karma, but I also believe in nurture versus nature. I was a social worker when I lived in the UK. We're in child protection, and I was also a counsellor, humanistic counsellor for adolescents. So you could often see that some of the behaviour was nature or it was nurture, and there's always been, the question, hasn't there? But today we're talking about what shapes us, what makes us possibly is karma. So, like you were saying, people steal from us, or we're always losing everything, or, we happen to live in a place that's barren or underwater, or suffer from nature as hurricanes, etc., etc. So, yeah, I can see that might be karma, but do you see where I'm going? Is it karma or is it nurture? And as Buddhists, we accept that it's karma, but if you're not a Buddhist practitioner, then perhaps the debate about nature versus nurture is more profound, perhaps.
Yeah, I wonder if you're not a Buddhist practitioner, I would think that you'd see much more of it happening externally from your mind, for the most part of people that I experience. And so one of the things, especially like what an incredible field you've been in, because these adolescent kids especially get into trouble and need incredible help and incredible care like that. And so what happens is Buddhism would say, I believe, that if I come back as an adolescent who is very dangerous like that, part of it, you might see that there was abuse in the family, but that's another karmic arisal. So in my mind, as that troubled adolescent, I've had a karmic seed in my mind to take rebirth in a family that abuses me, and also to have rebirth in a family that, due to that abuse, I develop into a sociopath, let's say. No, I'm going to an extreme here, but I'm just saying that's what Buddhism would say, that it's created by the karma like that, so that I end up in a not nourishing family that creates the habits to make me more like that, Buddhism would say. And then what happens without Buddhism is the parents get blamed sometimes, or sometimes it's amazing, and you probably could speak more to this, is you have a troubled adolescent, a troubled kid, and the parents have actually done everything possible, to really help the kid. I grew up across the street from one of our early, kind of sad to say, a very early mass shooter in my community, which was very unusual at the time. She opened fire and killed 3 people in our neighborhood shopping mall. And she injured a bunch of other people. And it was so sad. And I knew her mother, who was the sweetest, kindest, wonderful person. We weren't sure about the father. He never mixed with people. We didn't know, but the mother tried to get her committed to mental institutions at a young age. She was having trouble from the age of adolescence, 14, 15 years old, was suddenly manifested in a very dangerous way all of a sudden. I mean, this is somebody I played games with as a kid from like the age of 11 on. She was a year younger than me. At the age of 25, she went to the mall and opened fire and killed 3 people. And she's in prison in Pennsylvania for the rest of her life. Very bright woman. She's gotten a master's degree in prison, but very clearly diagnosed as paranoid schizophrenic. So the mother, you know, again, there were laws in Pennsylvania, you could only commit somebody as an adult for certain time periods. She tried as a child when she was an adolescent. So, you know, didn't appear to come from her mother. I mean, didn't appear to have those imprints from her mother, who tried everything, and the father, I don't, you know, but again, could Sylvia have come in with this own karma in her own mind, is what Buddhism would say. She came in with those seeds like that. Sylvia, her name was Sylvia, not Sylvie, not this Sylvie. This Sylvia has done nothing harmful that I'm aware of. No, Sylvia Segrist, you could look her up, unfortunately, Sylvia Segrist. Yeah, it's very sad. She's so she, and one of the things that also happened, I remembered her in high school having suddenly manifesting issues, but one of the things, the karmic seeds in there in her mind, I forget where I was going with that. But anyway, so as a result, so again, you know, how does child services, you know, get involved without the Dharma? Obviously, they're going to try to help as much as they can to, but so it's one thing if we look at taking responsibility for our minds and realizing there's some disturbance came in from previous lives, and then what you can do sometimes with severe mental illness, which is so challenging on our planet, and I know in the United States not given enough funds and enough help to really help people, is you obviously are going to manage as best as you can to get the right treatment, to get the right therapists, psychiatric care, sometimes being in a psychiatric place. She was from time to time in these places, and then released at some point when I think they realized there wasn't any more they could do. So they medicate people to try to keep them from harming themselves and harming others. We know how that goes. I mean, it goes so far, but the medications have very, very strong side effects that affect you. And so it's very challenging. We had a person, one of our directors of one of our centers was a wonderful man who founded Milarepa Center in Vermont in the United States. He was a wonderful man who had some sort of manifestation of mental illness later in life. And it went on for years and years and years. And I would visit him many, many times when I go to another, when he ended up in another state, but I would teach in that state and always go to visit him in whatever care home he was in until he passed away in one of these care homes. The care homes got worse and worse and worse because he was a ward of the state and just disturbance, but they kept him heavily medicated because he was dangerous at times. So again, as a Dharma practitioner, it must have been in his mind stream, created there somehow. And unfortunately, due to the medications, he was less and less able to communicate and things. It was just really sad, but I'm hoping he cleared out something in this life and is free and happy now, because he also did wonderful things at Milarepa Center, created this incredible center that had incredible lamas coming to the center for years in the old days, because he was a student long ago in the early 80s, and really created a situation. The center's still there today and well maintained and still hosting a little bit of the program, but renting retreat cabins and things. So just looking at, if you're looking at your own life, and you can now go to, in a sense, battle, but as a bodhisattva warrior, you're not battling with anyone else. You're only battling with your delusions. So what we want to do is create situations to make sure I'm creating the right virtuous antidotes to those particular non-virtues that I feel are stronger in my mind. That's the work we have to do. Sabrina? Oh no, Vivian. Let me get Vivian first. I think she had...
Yeah, just a question. Where things like autism come in regard to karma and genetics, where would that fall? I have a son with grade 2 autism, and it just interests me. Where does that come?
Yes, I couldn't say specifically how it manifests. It's clearly, Buddhism would say there's previous imprints in that consciousness to have have the consciousness, what I would call, I think we use these words now, neurodiverse.
Yeah.
So to have it where it's not really communicating and participating in a reality that most ordinary people are participating in that way. However, what I am learning more and more, again, what creates that specifically, I could go back to the chart a little bit to see if it has anything about neurodiverse mind states. I'm not really sure what would be the exact cause for that, but they would say the cause would be in there. But what I'm also noticing, interestingly enough, neurodiverse people, and what we're talking about is neurodiverse people could be people that hear language, other voices. They're people that relate in a different way to reality than we do. They could be moving in a certain way repeatedly, screaming sometimes, articulating in different ways than we do. But some of them, you might say it's due to a severe mental illness like that. And some of them, I believe, they're communicating on a different wavelength. And it doesn't mean, like people would say, if people hear voices, well, they're schizophrenic. I don't know if we need a label like that sometimes. There are other things, other wavelengths you can hear, tuning into other realities. So again, I would recommend, we recommend in a sense to have a reasonable assessment of the person to see what they're capable of doing and what they're not capable of doing. Unfortunately, our countries, I know certainly the United States, can you get them into a program that enhances what they're able to do and think and say and monitor would be wonderful. It's not always possible for that to happen, but sometimes there are wonderful programs that are helping these neurodiverse people be able to be very functional and productive and be able to manage their lives in certain ways. But again, Buddhism would say it's from previous imprints in that mind stream. So Vivian, I can't speak directly of what causes an autistic diagnosis per se, but
He's verbally, he's a verbal autism, but he seems to be able to imagine things far beyond and try to explain things far beyond what anybody else can understand. It's quite amazing.
Wow. Yeah.
Very
I know some
gentle, very
autistic
kind.
people like that, and some is so. The other thing is, it's hard to know whether this being comes in from kind of another realm that our limited thinking just has to put them in a category that's quite narrow, where, and I would just enhance what he can imagine and see if it can help him grow in a certain way or lead to, something that, he feels better to function. But where it comes from, I couldn't directly say.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a hard one. But yeah, there are some people you can learn so much. Sabrina.
Sorry. Yes. Regarding what you were saying about the relationship between parents and children, I was listening to a psychotherapy the other day. I don't think he's a Buddhist, but he said something very interesting. He said, well, we can help our children as much as they allow us to do so, because he was saying we can do our best. But then he wasn't talking about karma, but I thought about karma, because he said, we can do our best, but then we don't have to feel guilty if that doesn't work, because they have their own thing, they're separate from us. So I can do my best and that's it. If they don't allow us to help them, then what can we do? If we did our best, that's it. Don't feel guilty. And I was thinking about karma, and I was thinking about my life, because Buddhist teachings helped me a lot, because I used to give responsibility to my parents when I was young, it was them. And then when I listened to the teachings, then I thought, well, wait a minute, maybe, it's what I have in my mind, because my sister, as I was saying before, she didn't have the same experiences as me.
Right. Do you have any children?
No, I don't.
Okay. No. Be careful. Because you might get the curse that may you have a child who is just like you. I hope you have a child who's just like you. But one thing I was going to say, Sabrina, also is there's a level, though, be cautious. So apparently, from what I've studied and read, and please correct me, there's some child psychologists here, but the first few years of the child's life are the most pivotal. So as a parent, you don't just let go and go, well, they've got their own thing. They need to allow me to. That's the time when you want to try to get some virtuous imprints in, where you're teaching them about values. You're teaching them about ethics. Yeah, I think it's a very pivotal part. What kind of school do they go to at that age? Some kids, I started school at 3 years old, part-time, daytime. Some kids start at 4, some start at 5, some earlier, some later. But again, those are the pivotal times to make sure they're in a good education system, and at least at home, that you're imparting values of not stealing and being kind to others. And we have some Buddhist schools as well. And there's a lot of people that bring their kids to a summer camp for Buddhists, or bring them to the center and have them meet lamas. So they have this imprint of the value, the goodness, and getting those imprints. Now, kids, again, come in with their own karmic makeup like all of us, but you at least can impart a little bit, and they're saying till like 5 years old. And by then and then they start other school, and they're influenced by the kids in the school and social programming and things like that. But so we do the best we can, that when they come home, and when we would come home from school and we'd bring our stuff home from school of this kid said this and this one said this, and then how the parents relate to that has a big influence as well. So we're certainly going to try to do that and then when they become teenagers, that's when the process, they have to allow us to get in there, I find. So there are some years, I think it's really personally important. I mean, those of you that have raised kids would have more to say to it, but I think, does that kind of echo some of the things where you can't just sit back to the 3-year-old who's killing a lot of insects and not, if you want them to kill insects, you don't care, that's one thing. But if you feel like that might not be the best way for them to spend their time, you can then explain. And you'd explain about the insect's life. And what if there was a big foot that came down and mushed us now because they felt like we didn't matter? Then they can kind of value and see that ant's going to its home, and look, oh, there's all this community that they live with. It's just as valuable as our lives, like that. And that might prevent them in the future from valuing life. That might help them value life, to see that it's all valuable. I don't know if that makes sense. So
yeah, maybe I missed that, but that psychologist was saying that, you have to do your best to teach them the
you
best.
try.
Yeah,
Sure.
and then you just leave, in
Sure.
that.
So let me go on a little bit. We're just about out of time for lunch. And I want to talk about, again, with stealing, we were talking about results similar to the cause of an experience. You lose your things, your house is broken into, things are stolen. It's similar to the cause as an action. You want to steal, you see no problem stealing. So for instance, when I was a kid, and when I became a teenager and talked to other kids, I met kids that were shoplifters. Do you know that term, where they would steal stuff from stores as teenagers? That wasn't my makeup at all. When I was 4, I stole a pack of gum. When my dad took me into a pharmacy, it was on the floor. I thought it was mine. Like I took it. And when I walked out of the store, I had this really strong feeling that was not a good thing. I mean, my parents would teach me not to steal, but I knew it was going to come back to me. Like somehow, that was the only thing I ever really stole. I was never into stealing. But then I met up with these kids that they regularly stole stuff. I was in a store with them, and one of them's like, look what I got. And I immediately was like, that's not good. Like, that was not me. Okay. But lying, I was the queen of lying. I could get out of so much trouble. Somehow that was an imprint. And I noticed it going into like teenager. I didn't have any dharma. I mean, it wasn't that my parents taught me to lie, but in my 20s, I ended up in a vocation. You were kind of, rewarded for lying because you got advantages. It was successful for the business. And then finally, fortunately, got into the Dharma when I realized I need to clean up my speech. This is not a good thing. So for me, very much going after that, like being very careful. Here's another aspect of lying, not exaggerating. You embellish the trip. Well, the mountain was really, 35,000 feet high that I summited. That doesn't exist, a mountain that high on planet Earth that I'm aware of, right? So I'm very careful not to embellish the story, not to exaggerate. You know, even white lies I got very careful with. So a white lie, we say, it's not the best term for it, but where I'm trying not to hurt somebody. So I just kind of say, I can't make the party because I had a headache, when I really had no interest in going to the party, but I didn't want to hurt them. But I really even got better. There's always more creative ways to tell the truth rather than even saying a non-truth. So I totally went after it very clearly. So that's what you need to do, is figure out what of these am I doing? And go after that, being very cautious. You know, spend a couple of years like, oh, I know, because you notice that habit is there. That habit is there. Then we have appearances, sexual misconduct. Another one, we're just looking at the ones of body right now. Creates rebirth in the lower realms, can. Okay, and an environmental result. You live in a very dirty, unhealthy place. You know, sexual misconduct, adultery, you're interfering with two people in an intimate relationship, and usually due to sex, you break them up. It's and we might label and say, that's kind of dirty, you know, like, so you take rebirth in a dirty place. One time we were teaching Rinpoche led a retreat in Brazil, and they asked me to come to lead some of the sessions in Rio. It was a fascinating place, lovely people, right? And in order from the airport to get to the place where the retreat was, you pass the favelas, the slums. They're vast, they're huge, thousands of people living in these places. And the sewage is not proper. So when you go by, my friend who's Brazilian said, oh, it smells because of the waste, the sewage. And these people live in that. 24 hours a day they live in it. You don't smell it anymore when you're living in it, but so it could be a result of sexual misconduct. Results similar to the cause as an experience, you have your partner cheat on you repeatedly. But on a lesser degree, they flirt with other people, knowing you don't like it. So if you know your partner is very possessive and doesn't like that, and you flirt with people, that's sexual misconduct. That's a type of sexual misconduct. So you want to go after that and be very clean, clear in your relationships, very honest. You know, otherwise people will do that to you like that. You can have fighting in your relationship constantly. That can be a result of sexual misconduct as an experience. As an action, you think it's okay to do it again and again, cheat on your partner, you know, which results lying to them. So then you get a negative speech thing, right? And you do it again and again like that. So we're going to take a break for lunch, okay? And again, at lunch, if you want to discuss, we didn't get into it yet, the destiny, fate, coincidence, randomness, or karma. What do you think about that? A little bit more talking about where you think your suffering comes from. What do you think about the 10 non-virtues? What are manifesting for you? How would you like to go back into cleaning that up? And let's dedicate whatever merit we've created from this morning's exercises, morning's talks. May that help us create more and more positive imprints in our mind stream that will help us get enlightened quickly so we can benefit from all living beings. And I just wanted to share my screen to do the, I'm not going to be able to find it, the prayers for the food. Let's see if I can find this. Okay, here we go. So whatever we're going to eat for lunch, the best thing is to offer it. And you're going to imagine multiplying it. It's filling all the space. The food of the highest quality, it's empty in nature, lacks any inherent concrete. Let's see if I can, yeah. Let me see that, yeah. Okay. And we imagine transforming the food that is completely empty in nature. And we offer, just imagine offering this food to all the 6 realm beings and it immediately alleviates their suffering, bringing them to ultimate happiness. So for instance, when we really do a more extensive offering prayer, there's an offering booklet that tells you exactly how to make offerings and use those water bowl offerings for your best benefit. You can imagine, for instance, if it's beings in the Preta realm, and those are hungry ghosts who do not have food and drink, and when they come in contact with whole food and drink, all they see is pus and blood or a dried riverbed. So you imagine that the food transforms into food and nectar for them, and they can see it and engage with it and drink it and eat it, and it immediately alleviates their hunger and thirst, bringing them to ultimate happiness. So it's showering down around them. If you visualize beings in, let's say, the hot realms, you can visualize cooling rain nectar, distinguishing all the fires. The beings in the cold hells, it's warming beaches, warm baths, warm breezes, completely eliminating all the freezing karma energy they're experiencing. And may the food nourish us so we may continue our path to enlightenment, to benefit all living beings. It's really for that purpose, to benefit all living beings, that we are going to practice the yoga of eating lunch. Blessing the food, Om Hong 3 times with the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha. That's what that represents. So visualizing white, red, and blue nectar rays respectively with each syllable, coming from the Buddha's forehead, throat, and heart. So from all the images in this room or in your space, entering the food, blessing that completely. Om Ahum, Om Ahum, Om Ahum, Nama Sangye Lama, Chudeshin Nama, Gedunte, Kunyi Olama, Te Nama, Nama, Chivamu. The Guru is Buddha, the Guru is Dharma, the Guru is Sangha also. The Guru is the creator of all happiness. To all Gurus, I make this offering. We're talking about Guru, that deepest experience of the truth body of the Buddha that is part of you, especially once you remove the veils to your obscurations to your Buddha nature. That's really Guru. That. Thank you so much. We're going to take a break until 2 o'clock. So we have an hour and 15 minutes. Thank you so much.